Hi everyone, Chris. Hi everyone, Chris G here again, back with a Titan's Tale, and today we have a retired veteran from the Army joining us from Indiana, Stephen Morris. Stephen's got some really powerful things to talk about leadership and training and all that good stuff. So let me introduce and welcome Stephen Morris. Excuse me. How you doing,
Hey,
Steve?
brother, it's good to be here, man. Can't wait to talk about whatever we're going to talk about.
Oh, talk about all kinds of things. Primarily, I love to tell stories. That's what we do here at Titans Tales, tell stories, and hopefully some people learn from the good and the bad. So tell us a little bit about your journey in your business career and prior to in the military, I guess.
I mean, sure. How far back you want to go?
Well, when I want to go back to you're in the military
Okay.
and you're thinking about getting out
Okay.
and you're thinking, what am I going to do?
So, long story short, my entire adult life was spent in the army, right?
Hmm.
And I operated at pretty high levels, pretty peak performance, if you will. And 2000, I got the army told me I was getting out right at the end of 2016, and I had been hurt. So they do what we call a med board, or MEB, which is basically they're medically disqualifying you from service, and
I
so
got
they
you.
medically retire you. And so they notify me that they're going to give me an MEB, and you have a chance to defend yourself, and like, oh, I should stay in. Rarely does that work. Anyway, um, and then 8 months later, on July 17th, 2017, I'm sorry, July 11th, 2017, I'm a civilian again. And dude, words cannot describe the amount of just WTF. Um, the first 2 weeks were awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I realized I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. I realized I had no network outside of the army. I realized that I didn't know how to communicate my skills to anyone that didn't speak army. I didn't know anything. And so I'm a pretty audacious guy, and I kind of bullied my way into my first corporate position. But because I got hit so hard with what it was like to be a civilian again, I
Hmm.
just got super depressed, man. Super, super depressed. I was 220 pounds when I retired. In 10 months, I gained 80 pounds.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's 8 pounds a month for those of you like me that can't do math. That's 8 pounds a month. Um, and that's super unhealthy. That gaining weight so fast, like I said, I operated in the army at a pretty high level. So getting grossly out of shape like that really destroyed my mindset, destroyed my just everything. So I got
Sure.
super depressed. The more I ate, the more I gained weight. The more weight I gained, the more I got depressed. It was a
Depressed.
vicious
It's like
cycle,
a
man.
absolutely.
And so that lasted for about 3.5 years.
No kidding.
And the only reason I'm here, and I don't want to go too dark, but the only reason I'm here is I just never had the opportunity. And so many veterans go through this. That transition is brutal, brother. It is so hard to transition. Civilians don't communicate the way we do. They don't understand us. Like, I've had quite a few amazing accomplishments in the army,
Yeah.
which I can talk about, but no one understands it unless you were there or
Sure.
in the service. Like, you don't civilians don't understand. They try to understand. Thank you for your service, all that stuff. It's great, but they don't truly understand.
No,
And
we
so,
mean it. We just don't understand it. And
yeah,
I've got several friends that like I was telling you earlier that, but they can have a conversation and you're just sitting there thinking, and some of it you don't even understand, like the lingo, like you talk about and everything. And that happens in business too. If you're in a certain industry and you get into another industry, you have no clue what you're talking about until you've been experienced in it. And with you guys, it's life and death when you're all doing it, and communication becomes very important. But You,
Even that though,
yeah,
communication and the way I communicate to
yeah.
soldiers, completely different to how civilians communicate, right? I can literally we call it a knife hand,
Hmm.
and it isn't a sign of aggression, it's proving a point. And it's literally where you make a straight hand and you'll put it right in front of someone's nose. And you're just, it's like, yep, it's driving home a point called a knife hand. Civilians do not appreciate that.
No. But did you appreciate it when you first started the military?
I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
But
sure it's a trained.
and that's the thing for people like me who made a career out of the military, and even people, it doesn't take long to get fully indoctrinated into the service. So when we get out, it is super hard to readjust the way we communicate, Chris. It becomes almost a detriment. We are expert communicators. Like you said, it's life or death. But the way we communicate is often not received on the other end. And I had a great mentor tell me a long time ago, if someone's not picking up what you're putting down, as far as your communication goes,
Mhm.
that's on you. It's the communicator's job to make sure the message is understood and received. It's not the receiver's job. So it was all on me that people weren't picking up what I was putting down, but I
Yeah.
couldn't understand why.
It
And
made sense to
so
you. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it just, man, that drove me even further down the rabbit hole.
Mm.
And so I finally lucked out. I had this great mentor who was also retired Army, but like 20 years removed. He was towards the end of his corporate career, but
Mhm.
he still remembered what it was like to transition out of a career in the Army. And so he really took me under his wing, was so, and when I say this, Chris, like I cannot like put enough exclamation points at the end of it. He was so freaking patient with me. And I'm a meathead, man. I'm a ground pounder. So, you know, you got sometimes
Yeah.
blunt force trauma is the only way to get me to understand things. And but he was super patient and he just slowly worked with me and got me to where I am today. And even though that was such a horrible time in my life, I'm very thankful for it. One, it's a great story.
Mhm.
It's a great survival story. It's a great, I've been there, you can do it too story. And I learned some very valuable corporate lessons along the way where if I had just come straight into entrepreneurship, I would have missed all those lessons. And the way I kind of explain it is the company I worked for, I love or that company to this day. Um, Ingles Markets, I'll give them a shout out.
Mhm.
Um, Great company. The people I worked for, great people. My bosses, amazing bosses. But I identified very nitpicky things about the way they went about training, particular training managers.
Mhm.
And I realized the more I paid attention to other organizations, they do the exact same thing because we're great at training managers as far as the management of systems. We
Yes.
are horrible at training the people aspect of leadership. That you can have a manager and a leader in the same person, but those are two very distinct skill sets that need to be trained in two very distinct ways.
So business owners that are listening today and they have a team, they obviously have managers, but those managers, would you agree that need to lead as well to some
In some
extent?
cases,
Yeah.
it depends. Just because you have a position and you're a manager doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a leader. Sometimes it is just a manager of systems. But
Okay.
if other people are involved, then definitely there needs to be someone that has a leadership aspect within that team to
Mhm.
take the charge and be the people focus of said team or organization or business, whatever it is.
Okay. So for my listeners who can't see earlier, the knife hand, picture somebody putting your finger in their face, except instead of one finger, it's basically all four. Would that be
Yes,
right? Okay.
Correct.
So in our corporate world and entrepreneurial business world, you and I know that that finger in the face or the knife hand isn't going to work for managers and leaders today. Well, in a certain aspect it would, but not necessarily in the business world, in our um, civilian life. So what does a person do instead of the knife hand to get his point across?
Well, people usually um, look at me funny when I say this
All right, that's all I'm asking.
because b- the knife hand actually, even though it's typically associated with disciplinary, I'm scolding you or I'm disciplining you
It's
or
perceived that
whatever.
way. Yeah.
That's usually the way it's used. Um, that is a form of love.
Hmm.
In soldier speak, that is a form of love.
I hear you.
So, and how do you do that in the civilian world? You just love your people. You learn your people, you understand your people, and you create an environment where everyone thrives. You don't what I when I first got put in charge of my first team,
Hmm.
I was the strictest a-hole in the world, the most
Your
strict, I guess
your
strictest in the
military
word.
team or your
Yes,
civilian team?
military,
Okay. Uh-huh.
crazy strict. I quickly learned that that isn't necessarily the way to go about things. Um, and I just slowly started to understand that community within the team is paramount.
Hmm.
I learned that once I create that community within my team where everyone loves each other, everyone respects each other, everyone has each other's back, once that's created, they'll govern themselves. They'll hold each other accountable. A lot of times I don't even need the discipline because they're going to discipline each other for me, right? So you create that's how you go about it. You don't even towards the end of my career I didn't even need to use the knife hand. They would do it to each other,
Sure.
you right? So and the way I kind of formulate it because everybody wants a framework or whatever. The way I kind of formulate it is I broke it down into three categories. I call it the three C's:
Hmm.
community, consistency, and clarity. And what I did was I looked at every elite fighting unit ever through history, all the way back to the Vikings, the Roman legions, the Spartans.
Hmm.
And I tried to identify what made them so great compared to modern military units, what makes some of us great and some of us not so great. And one of the things I realized that we do really well and that, the Vikings did really well is they created a community out of their fighting force, right? So if they're home, they are all about taking care of each other, helping each other. They have very strict rules that they live by. It's a very community driven. While what would the word be? Not like oligarchic type.
Yeah.
No, not oligarch. I don't know the right word to use there, but they have a very strict hierarchy. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
System, but it's also very community oriented, right? They're all focused on each other. And that the same goes with the Spartans, the Roman legions. They are all very community focused within community, not outside community, inside community. Then they're very consistent. They show up for each other in a consistent way, on a consistent basis. There are very strict standards that they apply to how they show up, what they do when certain problems or actions need to be taken arise. And then finally, they're crystal clear. They have complete clarity on mission, vision, and values. So when you take those three aspects of any team and build them,
Hmm.
you are going to have a team that will govern itself, it'll discipline itself, it'll motivate itself, it'll inspire itself. It's basically a self sustained team. And literally, all you have to do is just ensure the autopilot stays on and the computer doesn't mess up.
Yeah. That reminds me of a little story. I had a, I was in charge of a team. Well, I was in charge of a lot of people, but my direct team underneath me, um, one guy was just an asshole. He knew he was an asshole. It was just part of the deal. Okay, and I talked to him about it. I said, well, I can understand why you're an asshole sometimes, but no other body does either. So get control of it. But he knew what he was talking about. I'm talking about your C's. He knew the consistency I wanted out of his department. His communication needed some work. What was the third C? Because
Uh,
it's community.
commu-
Okay,
yeah.
so the community he had to an extent because you get outside the business, he was a fun guy. You get him through that door, and all of a sudden he just changed. Well, there's another manager that they were fighting like cats and dogs. I mean, and it wasn't all him just because he was an asshole didn't make him. Uh, she was not seeing why he was upset or why they weren't seeing the conflict. Community wise, they knew they were all part of my team. They knew I respect them both, and they should respect each other. They knew that, but they just weren't communicating real well. And they needed to understand the consistency. I asked them for consistency out of one department and a different consistency out of this department because they were all part of a team that worked congruently with each other department. So one day they were bickering, and I knew they were I didn't wasn't part of it, but I was told they were bickering. So I just called them in, and then they had the feeling why they were showing up in my office. I sat them down. I just reached in my pocket, grabbed my credit card, and I handed it to them. I said, "You all go to lunch, and don't you come back until you resolve whatever it is you're arguing about. I don't even want to know what it is, but fix it." An hour later, because I thought maybe they might take a little longer. Actually, an hour and a half later, here they come. It's like, there you go. And I never heard about it again. Now they had another time, and I did it the second time. And the second time, they realized that I'm serious. Like, I'm done. Whatever it is, y'all have to work it out because here's what I'm expecting. Your friends, I know you are because I'll go to the bar with you. I'll be drinking and having a good time. But whenever it comes to getting through this door, we have to be consistent on what you're responsible for so that everything works for a bigger goal. And after that happened, they, I wouldn't say they were buddy buddies, but they resolved their issues themselves and knew not to come back to me about problems that they should have resolved themselves. So that's kind of what you're talking about in a way, because you're right. And you're working towards that community and your consistency and your communication.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just as a kind of a caveat to that story, isn't
Hmm.
conflict amazing? And it's so funny to me because so many, especially, I'm working with my clients and they're like, how can we get out of or avoid conflict? How can we squash conflict? I'm like, you don't want to squash conflict. Conflict's
No,
great. Like, that's where all the innovation happens, bro. Like, some of the
absolutely.
greatest things come from conflict. Now, you want it to be healthy conflict and you
Conflict
want
of
it to be
respect, like you were talking
resolved.
about. Yeah,
Absolutely. But at the same time, man, like, I'm sure that conflict they went through supercharged in some areas what needed to happen. It made maybe it made them more cohesive as a team. Maybe it made them understand each other a little bit better. Maybe it made them communicate a little bit. I have no idea,
sure.
but almost every circumstance you can point to where there was some sort of conflict like that, when it's resolved in a healthy manner, it's going to result in some sort of supercharge. And I love it. I love conflict. It makes me so happy, man. I encourage it. Like, hey, duke it out, man. Verbally, of course.
Sure. One actually, what I've taken this from, well, I learned this a long time ago, but I've taken it into my businesses when I hire people. And I want people to have conviction on what they believe and open minded too. So, what I tell them is I used to tell my estimators this, and I used to be an estimator. So, I was very particular about how I did my estimates and stuff forth. But if you have I told them their job is to uh, prove me wrong, meaning that in my mind, I'm always right. But I'm open to listen to what you have to say, and if I'm wrong, I will agree and change. But I want you to have the same if you really believe in it, I want you to be able to explain to me, and we have a conversation about what's happening. And I tell my managers now, my in my business, like, hey, come to me with ideas. I'm not the expert. I have my opinion, and I'm pretty strong about it. But that don't mean I won't listen to you and change my opinion based on what you're going to tell me. And that's where your communication. That's how you build those brainstorming sessions too. Through the conflict or through somebody passionate believing in what they think and see it from a different angle.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And to get to that place you're talking about, it takes time. We're not talking about silver bullets that are going to
no,
instantly solve problems. This is work that can take, at, I would say on the short end, at least 8 months to build. Because there's a lot of trust that's got to be implemented. There's a lot of respect that's got to be implemented. You can
hmm
tell me, you can come to me and say, Stephen, your sole purpose in life is to challenge every single opinion I have.
Yep.
And I'm going to be like, okay,
Mhm.
right? It's going to take time for me to get comfortable to understand that you actually mean that.
Exactly. Uh,
So once I do trust that, man, you're going to have someone that fights with you on everything. That's my job. But you can't just tell people that and then expect them to do it. A lot of times there's got to be a very deep amount of trust behind that, or else they're just not going to feel safe and comfortable to doing it. And that's where the community comes in, man. That is why it is so important, because all the trust, all the respect, all the safety comes from the community. Knowing, if I come to you and say, Chris, like, this is going on, like, you're doing this and this is detrimental for this reason, and you light me up. But I know Janet in department B next to mine is going to have my back and be like, Chris, he's right. You need to calm down and you need to listen to us. Right? That's the community I'm talking about. That's the respect, the trust, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And it's such a great, when you can get to that level, it is so great because things happen automatically, and people don't need to think about it. There have been times, with my team now, it's like, hey, uh, I had this idea a couple months ago. I'm like, man,
mhm.
that solves like problem X, Y, and Z. Why did you wait so long? I'm like, well, I didn't know if you wanted to hear it or if now was the right time, or, still building that trust.
Sure.
Obviously she didn't feel safe yet. And when she did, she came to me. So I mean, that's why it's so powerful when you build that community within your organization, that the ideas are going to flow freely. The conflict is going to rear its ugly head, or in my
hmm
opinion, its beautiful head, and it's going to get resolved in a timely, respectful manner. Sorry, and that's where your innovation is going to come, and that's where you're going to drive real results, and your growth and leverage are just going to be insane within the market that you're in.
What I was talking about, I have virtual assistants. I've had them for a couple of the same for 7 years, and the benefit there was, and this goes to the community part, that if you got somebody that trusts you in your business, even in corporate, and they trust you, and somebody new comes on, that learning curve speeds up a little bit because now they're because I've had my virtual assistants. No, he really means this. He wants you to participate. He doesn't want you to necessarily just go do because he said do. If you really have a question why, or want to understand it, or have a better plan, let him know. And I have a belief that, talking about your team building, that as long as people understand why, they will follow easier, I guess. And actually, and you'll know if they don't, they might be part of your team too. You're the wrong person for my team. But here's why we're doing this, or at least my why right now. And if you have either a solution to that answer compared to one I just gave you, then by all means, please share it. And some people
Have
don't
you
understand
ever
that. Yeah.
have you ever walked into a situation or environment, not necessarily in the business world, just in life in general,
Yeah.
maybe you played a sport in high school or something,
Mhm.
and you walk into the locker room and everybody believes, like truly believes you're going to win next Friday night. Don't you find it hard to not believe it yourself?
Mhm.
But if you walk into the locker room and everyone's like, "Man, I don't know, we're probably going to lose. We might win." Are you going to find it hard to believe you can win? My point is, whenever you create the community piece, then that's why it's first. Is once that's there, and you have, like you said, you have that guy that's been on your team for 7 years. He is bought into you. He is
Mhm.
bought into the mission, the vision. He's bought into your values. You sold him, and he is 100% vested into you. So now when you bring other team members on, it's so much easier for them to buy in as well, because they see all their not counterparts, their coworkers, colleagues, and like, man, this entire team is just fully bought into Chris. Like, holy crap! It's so easy to sell when the entire community is sold. And that's really about clarity, and when you have that crystal clear vision and you're able to communicate it, man, the other people, just like I said, they plus up for you, they police it up for you, and they'll sell that mission, vision, and values. And then that new person coming on, like you said, they're either going to buy, or they're going to show you they're the wrong person for your team. And that's okay too. It's okay
Absolutely.
for people to self-select out. There is nothing wrong with saying, "Hey man, I appreciate you trying us out. I don't think you're a good fit, do you?" And they're either going to say, "No, I think I'm a good fit." And then you can have the conversation, "Okay, well, I don't see it. So we're missing something here. Let's work through this." Or they're going to agree and be like, "Nah, man, I'm really not enjoying my time here. All right, well, let's figure out how to exit you, and let's figure out how to get you to the next place in your life, hopefully the right place in your life." And see, I don't just perp walk people out like they do now. It's
Yeah.
okay, this needs to happen. How are we going to help you succeed further on? And then they're going to go to their next place of work, talk about how dope I am, even though they got fired, even though it didn't work
Yeah.
out. And they're going to talk about how awesome I am, because I, even though it wasn't working out, still did the work, put the work in, the effort in. Man, I'm going to have 20 more candidates coming beating down my door wanting to know, "Hey, how can I come work for you?" I was talking to this lady. I ought to introduce her to you. Her name's Anjanellis. And she has created such an impressive environment, community within her organization. She was interviewing for a paid internship, one paid internship. She picked her candidate and started informing the other candidates, "Hey, you know, I've picked someone else. Unfortunately, you don't get the internship." And I'm like, "That's fine. I'll do it for free." She had 10 free interns because they just
Wow.
wanted to work in that environment. Isn't that crazy what happens when you put the work in?
Almost today in today's environment, yeah, it is kind of crazy. But that is a hell of a testimonial too, though, to what she
Right.
was created. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
Well,
when those kids go back to their dorm rooms at the end of the summer, they're going to start talking to all their friends like, "Yo, I worked at this awesome company for the summer and I didn't get
that's
paid, but this is how awesome this company was. This is how awesome Ange is." And then when all those kids graduate, she's going to have her pick of the litter,
oh yeah.
top of the class. She's going to have whoever she wants out of that class. I believe it was from Georgia Tech. Can't remember. I think it was Georgia Tech. I mean, what an awesome, like you said, testimonial for just how awesome your company is to work for. And companies are so see see if you agree with me on this, because a lot of people disagree with me on this.
Okay.
So as companies, we're very customer centric, right? We care we care a lot about customer experience, customer
Hmm.
testimonials,
Hmm.
customer happiness,
Sure.
customer retention, all those things, right? Those are key,
Add-on
numero
too.
uno important, right?
Absolutely. Hmm.
Let me argue with that mindset.
Okay.
Yes, we need to be focused on keeping our customers happy. My argument isn't that. My argument is how we do that. Do we do it with customer appreciation training? Or do we do it with community building within our organization to make our employees just love their freaking job, happy to come to work every Monday, not dread it, make them have more good days than bad days, make them love me, make them love you, make them love the company, make them love our products and services, make them believe in what we do. Are the customers not going to be happy automatically because our employees are happy?
I actually did a podcast with the lady a couple weeks ago, and I have adopted her philosophy of uh, Lisa Apolinsky. I give a shout out to her. I she lives in the world of multiple yeses, and I think it's a combination of what you just said. And I would add something to that as well. You got an internal customer and an external customer. I used to preach this. And your internal customer is your family, the ones inside your business, and your external customer, you got to keep them happy too. And I agree with you. If your customers are happy, then it radiates. Okay. Now the part I want to add to your thought is that uh, I used to think, I used to think the customer's always right, and and that's not true. I used to think this is a long time ago. I'm 54 and been in business for a long time, whether corporate or whatever. I used to think customers always right, and that's not true. I used to think sales is great. Sales as in getting money to come in. And while sales, that concept's still correct, it's the right amount of sales or right type of sales, put it that way. So my comment to you is that keeping customers happy, but you got to keep the right customer happy.
Hmm.
So let me give you an example. Um, I won't summarize it, but basically, at one time we used to bring in. My boss wanted sales, sales, sales. I'm like, okay, we're gonna bring in sales, and we got to a point where we brought any sales we wanted, just as long as it was sales, and we could do it, but it wasn't efficient for us to do it. Okay, well, it caused issues inside the plant, and um, then we got to a point where you learn to maybe get rid of some customers that don't really fit your niche anymore. That was one concept, and then looking at okay, bringing in the right type of sales, bringing in that because if you look at it one big family, your internal family and external family as customers go, and we all got to get along. Now the internal, we got to be more tolerant to our customers, yes, but if you got the right customers, a lot easier to be more tolerant. So at the point where some things changed and I became in charge of the plan itself, and I went to sales because I was used to being the manager at sales. I knew the frustrations that my replacement was undertaking, and I told him, I said, I will never tell you no to this type of customer. And as long as your guys are out there focusing on that type of customer, I will move whatever I can to make that happen, that we'll get that sale in here and keep that customer happy. Now, I didn't say stop the other stuff. I said I might tell you no if you bring something that don't fit, or if I got space for it, I'm going to do it. I'll make that happen. But you might say that you're going to waste your time on that one if it doesn't fit and we don't have the room for it. But I'd much rather have the room for this type of work. So that makes your internal family work well together because now everybody's working on the same goal. It's the same type of work, whatever it is. I mean, it could be marketing as well. I mean, we had a physical product, but just whatever it is, we're going to all be consistent with what our message is, consistent with what has to happen, make you more efficient inside for sure. And obviously, happier external customers is a whole lot easier than frustrated external customers. And then they're so excited they're going to tell other people who they do work business with, just like you were talking about your interns telling other people about the business. So um, I agree with a lot of what you just said. I think is what I just summarized.
I mean, yeah, man. And when you think about it, it's so well. Okay, I want to circle back to something you said real quick
Okay.
because
All
it's
right.
super funny. You were talking about being consistent with. I think you used the word mission. How
Hmm.
many companies have you worked for that had a 10-page mission statement? Or maybe a few less, maybe possibly more. But how many companies have you worked for that just had a ridiculously long mission statement? And you're like, how can we even memorize? Like, we can't memorize this crap. No one's going to memorize it. The CEO is not going to memorize it.
Well, I worked for one company that didn't have a mission statement at all,
Well,
nor a
that's 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 horrible in the complete opposite
yeah,
direction.
no, but I told them that's why they brought me online. We got that straightened out. Um, I worked for one who, yeah, it was too broad in my opinion. And it's not 10 page, and maybe you're being facetious, but you meant like
Right.
really big in the fact that, um, yeah, it's not a clear, it's not a clear goal. It's confusing to some because you might even get to a point where it's conflicting in some ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. The bigger it is, the longer it goes, the more, like you said, it can eventually can become conflicting. You have room to start conflicting yourself. But to me, the most important thing is can my team memorize it? I need it to be so concise and to the point
hmm,
that my team, I can walk up to them and say, "What's our mission?" Our mission is to go to Hill 419 and hold it and meet the enemy, kill the enemy. Obviously, not,
no,
I'm using a military reference for the,
sure,
but um, like that is our mission. Now, how we execute mission, that's a different story. But our mission is this. Our mission is to go find this customer, whatever
hmm,
that customer looks like. Our mission is to sell that customer our service. And then our mission is to ensure and retain that customer and ensure that customer's happiness and retain that customer. That is our mission. How we go about that, that might be up to you as the team manager or the team
yeah.
leader, or how we maybe I have different parameters of how you go about that built in someplace else. But that mission is cut, dry, concise, and memorable.
That I never really thought about that way, but that's what we told the sales staff.
Right. And the person that taught me
Yeah.
this, that they were in the Navy, and he was telling me a story about it. And every warship has a memorabilia room of its history.
Okay.
Of
I didn't know that.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep. And so he walked into the room. I can't remember they have a word for it. I don't remember what it is. But he walks into the room and he sees an old World War II mission order. We call it an op order
Yeah.
or an op order. So operational order. So he walks over and he reads it. And op orders are normally really long, but they have
Mhm.
this key thing. It's called a mission statement. And that it means a little bit different in the military than it does in corporate. The mission
Sure.
statement is what I just described.
Okay.
It is that key piece that every sailor on that ship needs to know. And he opened it up and he read the mission statement. And the statement was, you are to go to one of the islands in the Pacific. I don't remember which one, meet the enemy and destroy them.
That was it.
That was it. Nothing else matters. That is our mission. That is what we are going to go do. And so if you're building a company or maybe you're in a position where you can go review your mission, if it is insane, Sit down with your team and just refine it. And when your team has that clarity of what their mission actually is, it becomes a whole lot easier to complete it, right? Imagine if that mission, that op board that I just described said, all right, you're going to go to this checkpoint, and then you're going to go to this island. You're going to refuel at this island, and then you're going to go to this checkpoint, and then to this island. And then you're going to go to this island, meet the enemy, and destroy them. It's a whole lot easier to execute, isn't it? It's a whole lot more to remember. We got to make it simple, impactful, punchy, and memorable. It's just boom. It becomes so much easier to complete your mission. I'm sorry, I'm off my soapbox now.
No, no, no. I can't think of a better way to end our podcast today with clearly telling people how to make missions and make them clear, concise, and punchy, as you said. So, Stephen, thank you. If people wanted to reach out to you, you do coaching, is that right, or training, or what's your? I guess you do a lot of things. I can tell. Um, how would they
Yeah,
reach out and find you? I guess.
yeah, I do. I do individual coaching. I do group work. I do facilitating, and I do consulting. So whatever it is you need from us, we're happy to meet with you and see if we can work with you. Um, I have my niche, and if you aren't the right fit for me, I will politely tell you you're not the right fit for me. But I have a giant network of amazing people, and I will get you to the right person to help you with whatever the problem is that you're having. Best way to get in contact with me is just to go to renownedleadership.com. And at the bottom right hand, the little bubble will pop up. It'll send me a text.
Awesome.
So just shoot me a text, tell me what your problem is, and we'll set up a meeting and we'll talk about it.
Well, Stephen, with Renowned Leadership, thank you very much. And you guys can't wait to get back to you on next week's episode of A Titan's Tale.